Part 1. Burn the bridge to your old self. There's a story I heard about a young man who stood at the edge of a riverbank with everything he owned stuffed in a single bag. Behind him was the life he had always known, his old town, his old habits, his old failures. Ahead of him was a small boat waiting to carry him across the river into a new land. The man's father gave him one final piece of advice. "Son, if you want to succeed, burn the boat once you reach the other side. Leave yourself no way back." The young man did exactly that. He crossed, burned the boat, and forced himself to move forward. That decision changed his life. Most people never do this. They leave their boats ready behind them. They hold on to their old identity like a lifeline, afraid to let go. But here's the truth. The person you are right now is not the person who's going to take you to the life you dream about. You must destroy the path back to who you've been. This is the first brutal rule of transformation. Kill your old identity without mercy. The prison of identity. Think about how many times you've said things like, "I'm just not good with people. I've never had much willpower. That's just not who I am." We repeat these lines so often that we start believing they are facts. But they're not facts. They're stories. They're excuses wrapped in familiar words. Your old identity is like a prison you built yourself. The bars aren't real, but you hold the key and never use it. I remember a man named Robert I once worked with. He was brilliant with ideas but always called himself lazy. He laughed about it, wore it like a badge, even used it as an excuse whenever he failed. One day I asked him, "Robert, what if you stopped calling yourself lazy? What if you spoke about yourself the way you wanted to be?" He didn't answer. But I could see in his eyes that something clicked. A year later, he was running his own business. He told me, "The day I stopped telling the story of who I was, I started living the story of who I wanted to become." That's the power of identity. And that's why you must kill the old one. Stop asking for permission. The second brutal rule is this: stop asking for permission to exist. Most people live like they're waiting for a teacher to hand them a hall pass to chase their dreams. They look around for approval before they make a move. They wait for family to believe in them, friends to cheer for them, or the world to give them a green light. But let me tell you something I learned early: nobody is coming to give you permission. The world is too busy dealing with its own problems. Your parents won't give it, your friends won't, society won't. The truth is, nobody cares whether you succeed or fail. And that should excite you, because if nobody cares, then nobody's opinion has the power to stop you. I once spoke with a woman named Sarah who wanted to write a book. For years she told me she was waiting for the right moment. But when we dug deeper, what she was really waiting for was permission, from her family, from her friends, from people she barely even liked. She wanted someone to tell her it was okay. Finally, one day she sat down and started writing without telling anyone. 6 months later, she had a finished manuscript. She said, "The moment I stopped needing approval was the moment I got free." Your life is not a committee vote. It doesn't run on majority rule. You don't need permission to want what you want. You don't need permission to go after it. You only need your own decision. Discomfort is your compass. Now we come to the third brutal rule: embrace discomfort like your life depends on it. Because it does. Let me explain. Comfort is not your friend. It's a slow poison. Every time you choose comfort, you're choosing to stay the same. You pick the easy road, you stay where you are. But discomfort, that nervous, uncertain feeling you get right before a bold move, is actually a compass. It points directly at the place where you need to grow. Years ago, I met a young salesman named Tom. He hated making calls. His palms would sweat, his throat would tighten. He avoided the phone and told himself he wasn't a natural. That was his story point. One day I told him, "Tom, the thing you're afraid of is the very thing that will set you free. That discomfort is your guide." He took it to heart. He started making those calls, one after another, forcing himself through the discomfort. Within a year, he was the top salesman in his company. He told me, "Every time I felt uncomfortable, I knew I was about to get stronger." That's the truth most people miss. Comfort feels safe, but it keeps you stuck. Discomfort feels scary, but it leads to transformation, burning the boat within. So here's the picture I want you to keep in your mind. Your old self is standing on one side of the river. Your new self is waiting on the other. A boat will take you across, but once you get there, You must burn it. Don't keep the path back. Don't negotiate with who you've been. Don't ask permission from people who don't understand your vision. And don't run from the discomfort that's trying to grow you. Because every day you delay, you're strengthening the chains of your old identity. But every day you act without permission, every time you lean into discomfort, every moment you choose the new story, you're killing the old you and giving birth to the person you're meant to be. And once that person is alive, the old version of you won't even recognize who you've become. Fire. That's part 1 finished. About 1,000 words. Napoleon Hill. Inspired, simple, American story-driven, and engaging. Do you want me to continue with part 2 now, the next brutal rule, keeping the same storytelling style? Part 2, The Price of Growth. There's a story about a young blacksmith in a small town. Every day he swung his hammer against hot iron until his arms ached. He wasn't strong at first. In fact, he could barely lift the hammer when he started. But he showed up every day, sweating, straining, forcing his body to go where it didn't want to go. Months passed, and something amazing happened. His arms grew powerful. His back grew broad. His grip became unshakable. The hammer that once felt impossible to lift became light as a feather. Why? Because strength doesn't come from what's easy. It comes from what's hard. That same law applies to your character, your confidence, and your abilities. They grow only when you push them beyond what they're used to. This brings us to the next brutal rule of transformation. Embrace discomfort as the price of growth. The trap of comfort. Most people spend their lives running from anything that feels uncomfortable. They stay in jobs they hate because looking for something better feels risky. They keep quiet in meetings because speaking up feels scary. They hang around friends who don't support them because making new ones feels awkward. Comfort becomes their drug. It feels safe, but it slowly kills their potential. Think of a circle drawn in the sand. Inside that circle is everything you know, your routines, your habits, your comfort zone. Outside the circle is the life you want. Every time you step outside that circle, your chest tightens, your hands sweat, your stomach twists. That's fear talking. But here's the strange truth. That feeling is proof you're moving in the right direction. The strongest people in the world aren't strong because they never feel afraid. They're strong because they feel fear and move forward anyway. Proof of importance. When you feel that nervous tension before doing something new, whether it's starting a business, having a difficult conversation, or speaking in front of a crowd, don't mistake it as a warning to stop. See it as proof that you're about to do something important. Fear is a liar. It tells you to wait until you feel ready. But the truth is, you will never feel ready. Readiness isn't something you wait for. It's something you create by acting before you feel prepared. I once met a man named David who always dreamed of starting a restaurant. For years he told everyone, "I'll do it when the timing is right." But the timing never came. Every year there was another excuse. Too busy, too risky, not enough money, not enough support. He waited until he felt ready, and by the time he finally tried, he had lost the spark. Someone else opened the restaurant he always dreamed of. David's story is a warning. Waiting for fear to vanish is the same as waiting forever. The company you keep. There's another part of this rule people overlook. The people you surround yourself with. You've probably heard the saying, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." That's not just a clever phrase. It's one of the hardest truths you'll ever face. Look at your circle. Are your friends and family living the kind of life you want to live? Do they challenge you to be better, or do they keep you small because your growth threatens their comfort? Being loyal doesn't mean you sacrifice your future for people who don't want to grow. Some people were meant to be one chapter of your life, not the whole book. Holding on to them is like trying to drive your car forward while staring only in the rearview mirror. Every person in your life is either giving you energy or draining it. Nobody is neutral. That friend who complains about everything? They're training you to see problems instead of solutions. That family member who mocks your ideas? They're teaching you to doubt yourself. That coworker who lives in drama? They're pulling you into chaos that doesn't belong to you. You don't owe anyone the right to keep draining your spirit. Protect your energy the way you'd protect your home. If someone showed up at your front door every day dumping garbage on your living room floor, would you let them in? Of course not. Yet people allow negativity to enter their minds and hearts every single day. Cutting toxic people from your life doesn't mean you hate them. It means you love yourself enough to choose growth. It means you know not everyone who is right for your past is right for your future. The speed of decision, another brutal rule, follows close behind. Make decisions at the speed of instinct. You've been taught to overthink, to analyze, to plan everything perfectly before making a move. But overthinking is just another name for fear. I once coached a young man named Chris. He had a brilliant idea for a small business, but he kept hesitating. He wrote plans, lists, strategies, more lists. By the time he felt ready, someone else had already launched the exact same idea. Chris was left with nothing but regret. Here's the truth: speed beats perfection every time. Your gut feeling, that first instinct in your stomach, isn't random. It's the product of millions of years of human development. It's your subconscious processing patterns your logical brain can't even see. But society trains us to doubt it, bury it, and second-guess ourselves. The most successful people act quickly. They know most decisions can be changed later. They know mistakes are not the end of the world. They know the real danger is not acting at all. Think about your biggest regrets. Are they things you did, or things you didn't do? For most people, the deepest regrets are the chances they never took. The person you want to become doesn't wait for the perfect moment. They create it. They don't ask 10 people for advice. They trust their own judgment. They act, and then adjust as they go. The world rewards the ones who move, choosing your future over your fear. So here's the choice you face every day: stay in comfort, keep the same friends, keep overthinking, and stay the same person. Or step into discomfort, protect your energy, make bold decisions, and become the person you've always known you could be. Yes, it feels uncomfortable. Yes, you'll feel fear. Yes, people may not understand. But growth always comes at the price of discomfort. And here's the good news: the more you practice being uncomfortable, the more natural it becomes. What once felt impossible becomes manageable. What once felt hard becomes normal. You become the kind of person who thrives in challenge instead of shrinking from it. That's how transformation happens, one uncomfortable step at a time. Fire. That's part 2 finished. About 1,000 words, Napoleon Hill, style, with stories, simple language, and lessons. Do you want me to go ahead and prepare part 3 in the same style? Part 3. The secret courage of failure. The room went silent when James stood up. It was a small gathering, just 20 people in a dusty community hall on a Tuesday night. But James felt like he was speaking in front of thousands. His palms were sweating, and his throat was dry. He was about to admit something most people spend their entire lives hiding. Last year, he began, I invested every dollar I had into a business idea. And it failed. Not a little. Completely. A nervous laugh slipped out of him, but he kept going. I lost money. I lost sleep. I lost friends who thought I was crazy. But I learned more in that failure than I ever did in all my years of playing it safe. The audience didn't laugh. They leaned forward. They wanted to hear more, and that's when James realized something important. Failure wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Failure is proof you're alive. Think about it. The people who never fail are the people who never try. They sit on the sidelines, protecting their image, afraid to take a single risk that might reveal they're not perfect. But James, by failing, proved he was in the arena. He wasn't just watching others live. He was living. Napoleon Hill once said that every adversity, every failure carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. James hadn't found his benefit yet, but the seed was there, waiting to grow. And the more he spoke about his failures, openly, without excuses, the more people respected him. Not less. Because honesty and courage are rarer than success. Your failures are not stains on your life. They're your credentials. They prove you showed up for the fight. Working in silence, a woman in the audience asked James what he was planning next. Would he start another business? Write a book about his mistakes? James shook his head. I'm not going to talk about my next move, he said with a quiet smile. I'm just going to make it. That's the second lesson. Too many people spend their lives announcing what they're going to do. They post about their new habits, brag about their goals, tell everyone they're about to do something big. And then they don't. Why? Because the applause they get for their intentions kills their hunger to act. They confuse talk for action. James had learned the hard way. He had wasted time explaining his vision, defending it, trying to win people's approval. That energy should have been spent building. So this time, he would keep quiet, work in silence until success makes noise. That's the secret. demanding excellence, but silence alone isn't enough. You could be quietly lazy and nobody would know. James realized that if he wanted a different outcome, he had to set a new standard for himself. Excellence had to become his default. That meant finishing every job like his reputation depended on it. That meant refusing to accept good enough from himself, even when nobody was watching. That meant rewriting an email until it sounded professional, showing up early when others showed up late, and sticking to his promises even if they were only promises to himself. He stopped saying, "One day I'll be great." He started asking, "Is this my best right now?" The truth is, most people only give their best when someone important is watching. But the people who succeed at the highest level, the people who build fortunes, legacies, movements, they don't need an audience to perform. They carry their own standards so high that failure to meet them feels like betrayal. Excellence became James's new baseline. Playing the long game still, he knew it wouldn't happen overnight. Nothing great does. When he walked home from that community hall, James thought about where he wanted to be 10 years from now. Not next month. Not even next year. 10 years. He pictured his future self, confident, successful, respected, with a business that actually worked, with lessons that others wanted to hear. And then he asked the hard question, what would that man expect me to do today? The answer wasn't glamorous. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't something that would impress anyone on social media. It was simply this: take the next step, no matter how small. See, most people are addicted to quick wins. They want instant results, miracle solutions, overnight transformations. But James decided to play a different game. The long game. He wasn't racing anymore. He was building. Slowly, steadily, piece by piece, like laying bricks for a house that would stand for decades. And that made all the difference. The man in the arena. Months later, James failed again. Not as big as the first time, but enough to sting. But this time, he didn't panic. He didn't feel ashamed. He treated failure like a teacher, took the lesson, and moved forward. His friends asked, "Aren't you tired of falling down?" He smiled. "I'm just learning how to walk." Because the truth is, failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the path to it. Every stumble, every scar, every attempt that doesn't work, it's training. Just like a child falling down 100 times before finally walking without thinking about it. The person you want to become, the person who's already living the life you dream of, has failed more times than you've even tried. That's why they're ahead. So stop fearing mistakes. Stop waiting for perfect information. Stop needing guarantees. None of that exists. What exists is your willingness to step into the arena, to take the hit, to learn, and to keep moving forward. Because the world doesn't remember the people who never tried. It remembers the ones who dared, failed, and rose again. Fire lesson of part 3. Failure is not your enemy. It's your credential. Work in silence, demand excellence from yourself, and play the long game. Every scar is proof you showed up to fight. Every fall brings you closer to walking without falling. Backhand index pointing right. That's part 3. Story-driven, Napoleon Hill style, 1,000 words. Do you want me to keep the same character, James, for part 4 to 6 so the whole book flows like one connected narrative? Or should each part introduce a different person/story with its own lesson? Part 4. The hidden power of persistence. The factory floor was loud, hot, and endless. Machines roared, sparks flew, and the air smelled of iron and sweat. At the far corner, a man named Daniel was swinging his hammer. Over and over, he struck a giant steel beam. The sound echoed, metal on metal, like thunder trapped in the walls. He wasn't trying to bend it in one blow. He knew better. He was trying to shape it slowly, strike by strike, patient as the years. Daniel was a blacksmith's apprentice, barely 22 years old, and every day his arms ached from labor. But it wasn't the hammer that was shaping the steel. It was Daniel's persistence. The illusion of overnight success. One night, after the whistle blew, Daniel sat outside the factory with his friend Mark. Mark was frustrated. "I can't do this anymore," Mark groaned. "I've been saving for years, but I still don't have enough to start my own shop. Maybe I should just give up and try something easier." Daniel wiped his hands on his apron. "You're looking for overnight success, Mark. But that doesn't exist." Mark frowned. "Then how do people make it big?" Look at those who suddenly have money, businesses, houses. They make it look easy. Daniel shook his head. You only see the final blow. You don't see the 1,000 strikes before it. Napoleon Hill would have nodded. He taught that every great success story is years of invisible effort made visible all at once. People only notice the last strike that cracks the stone, but they ignore the hundreds before it. The stonecutter's secret. Daniel remembered something his mentor once told him. There's an old story about a stonecutter. He hammers at a rock 100 times with no sign of a crack. Then on the 101st blow, the rock splits in two. Was it the last strike that did it? No. It was the 100 before that made it possible. That story became Daniel's philosophy. Every day he worked, even when it looked like nothing was happening. He trusted that persistence was silently building power, waiting for its moment to reveal itself. This is where most people fail, not because they lack intelligence or talent, but because they quit too soon. They swing the hammer 20 times, see no change, and walk away. But the ones who succeed are the ones who keep swinging when nothing seems to move, building character in silence. Daniel never bragged about his persistence. He didn't talk about how hard he was working. He simply showed up every morning, hammer in hand, ready to swing again. His persistence built something inside him that most people never develop: character. See, persistence doesn't just change the outside world, it changes you. Every time you choose to keep going when quitting would be easier, you're building muscle in your spirit. You're training yourself to be the kind of person who cannot be broken. That's what separates winners from dreamers. Winners persist when the dreamers walk away. The test of fire. Years passed. Daniel saved every extra penny he could. Finally, he opened his own small blacksmith shop. At first, business was slow. His neighbors laughed. Who needs a blacksmith anymore? Factories do everything faster. But Daniel didn't quit. He kept showing up, hammering, perfecting his craft. While others gave up on old trades, Daniel became known for his skill, his patience, his reliability. Farmers trusted him with their tools. Merchants trusted him with their wagons. And one winter, when the factory closed and men lost their jobs, Daniel's little shop kept him alive. Why? Because persistence doesn't just build success, it builds independence. The long game nobody wants to play. One day, Mark, the same friend who had given up years earlier, came to visit Daniel. His face was tired, his pockets empty. You were right, Mark said quietly. I wanted quick success. I jumped from one job to another, always chasing the shortcut. And now I have nothing. Daniel looked at his old friend with compassion. It's not too late. But you have to learn the long game. Success is like iron, you can't bend it in a day. You have to heat it, strike it, shape it again and again. Mark nodded, but Daniel could see in his eyes that persistence didn't come naturally to him. And that was the lesson. Persistence isn't a gift you're born with. It's a choice you make daily. What persistence really means. Napoleon Hill defined persistence as the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. It's not about stubbornness, it's about belief. When you persist, you're telling yourself, I believe in this so much, I'll keep going until it becomes real. Daniel's shop grew slowly year after year. Not quickly enough to impress the impatient, but steadily enough to support his family, earn his community's trust, and build a reputation that no shortcut could ever buy. And when he looked back, Daniel realized something powerful. The real victory wasn't the shop. It was the man he had become. Strong, disciplined, unbreakable. Your hammer, your rock. The truth is, you and I face the same choice every day. We have our own hammer. We have our own rock. The hammer is our effort. The rock is our goal. Most people quit before the rock ever cracks. They walk away, telling themselves it was impossible. But the few who persist, the ones who keep swinging even when the rock looks the same, those are the people who wake up one day to find it split wide open. That's the power of persistence. It's not glamorous. It's not exciting. It's not quick. But it works every single time for those who refuse to quit. Fire. Lesson of Part 4. Success isn't about a single strike. It's about the 1,000 unseen blows that came before it. Be persistent when others quit, and one day, the world will call you lucky. But you'll know the truth, it wasn't luck. It was persistence. Backhand index pointing right. That's Part 4 rewritten in story form. almost equals 1,000 words. Do you want me to make part 5 about the theme of self-discipline and inner control, very Napoleon Hill style, or keep building around persistence with a new character? Part 5. The quiet power of self-discipline. The alarm clock rang at 5 a.m. sharp. Tom groaned and rolled over in bed. Every muscle in his body begged him to stay under the warm blanket. But then he remembered something his father used to say. "Son, discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it." Tom threw off the covers, laced up his running shoes, and stepped out into the cold morning air. His breath came out like smoke, his legs felt heavy, but he started running anyway. That single decision, to act instead of staying comfortable, was the foundation of the life he was building. Why discipline matters more than motivation. People often ask Tom how he found the motivation to wake up early, to keep training, to stick to his goals. Tom would smile because he knew the truth. Motivation is unreliable. Motivation is like the wind, it comes and goes. But discipline? Discipline is the engine that keeps going, rain or shine, tired or energized. Napoleon Hill wrote that self-discipline is the master key to personal power. Without it, every dream collapses under the weight of excuses. With it, even ordinary people achieve extraordinary results. Tom wasn't the fastest runner. He wasn't the strongest. But he was disciplined. And that made him unstoppable. The battle inside every morning was a battle. Not against other runners, not against the weather, but against himself. Tom's mind whispered 1,000 excuses. "You're too tired. You worked hard yesterday, you deserve a break. Sleep in, just this once." But discipline isn't about silencing those voices. It's about acting in spite of them. He learned that discipline wasn't about giant acts of heroism. It was built in small daily choices, eating the right food when junk food was calling, reading a chapter of a book instead of scrolling on his phone, running an extra mile when his legs begged him to stop. Each small decision stacked up like bricks, building the fortress of his character. The temptation of comfort. Tom's friends often invited him out late on weekends. "Skip your morning run," they said. "One night won't matter." And sometimes Tom was tempted. But then he remembered, comfort is the enemy of growth. Napoleon Hill taught that your greatest asset is the ability to control your thoughts, actions, and desires. Comfort tries to rob you of that control. It whispers, "Stay safe, stay easy, stay average." Tom decided he would rather be respected for his discipline than liked for his excuses. A test of steel. 1 year, Tom signed up for a marathon. The longest distance he had ever run before was 10 miles. A full marathon was 26. People laughed. "You'll never make it," they said. "You're not built for that kind of distance." But Tom didn't argue. He just kept showing up, mile after mile, morning after morning. His secret weapon wasn't talent, it was self-discipline. On the day of the race, Tom struggled. His legs cramped, his lungs burned, and every step felt heavier than the last. At mile 20, he wanted to quit. But his discipline carried him forward. He finished the race, not fast, not flashy, but strong. Crossing that finish line, Tom realized something powerful. Self-discipline doesn't just help you reach goals. It transforms who you are. It makes you stronger than you ever thought possible. What discipline really gives you? Discipline gives you freedom. That sounds strange, doesn't it? People think discipline is about restriction, about saying no. But in truth, discipline frees you from being controlled by laziness, fear, and bad habits. Tom didn't always feel free when his alarm rang at 5 a.m. But he was free when he crossed the marathon finish line. He was free when he felt healthy and strong while others complained about their bodies. He was free when opportunities came his way because people trusted his reliability. Discipline is the price you pay today for the freedom you want tomorrow. The law of the farmer. Think of a farmer planting seeds. He doesn't see results the next day. He doesn't dig up the seeds to check if they're growing. He simply keeps planting, watering, and waiting. That's discipline. Doing the work today without immediate reward. Trusting that the harvest will come. Most people want the harvest without planting the seeds. They want results without routine. That's why they stay stuck. But Tom understood, if you can master yourself, you can master anything. Building the future self. Tom's story isn't really about running. It's about building the future self he wanted to become. He asked himself, what would the man I want to be do right now? Then he did it. Even when it was uncomfortable. especially when it was uncomfortable. That's the secret of discipline. It's not about who you are today. It's about shaping who you'll become tomorrow. Every discipline choice is a vote for your future self. Your own marathon. You don't need to run a marathon to learn this lesson. Your marathon might be writing a book, starting a business, paying off debt, or getting in shape. Whatever your goal, discipline is the bridge that takes you from where you are to where you want to be. No shortcuts. No magic secrets. Just discipline, practice daily until it becomes your way of life. Napoleon Hill said, "Self-discipline begins with the mastery of your thoughts. If you do not control your thoughts, you cannot control your needs." Tom mastered his mornings, his habits, his actions. And in doing so, he mastered his future. Fire lesson of Part 5. Discipline is not punishment, it's the highest form of self-respect. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you're telling yourself, "I am worth it. My future is worth it." And that is how ordinary people achieve extraordinary success. Backhand index pointing right. That's Part 5, told in story form, simple and powerful, about the hidden power of self-discipline. You want Part 6, final, to be the grand conclusion, tying together persistence, discipline, decisions, and mindset, like Napoleon Hill's definiteness of purpose. Lesson? Part 6. The power of a definite purpose. The old man leaned back in his chair, staring at the young crowd gathered before him. His hair was silver, his hands wrinkled, but his voice carried the weight of a man who had lived through storms and victories alike. "Young folks," he said slowly, "if there's one lesson I wish I had learned earlier, it's this: nothing in life matters until you know exactly what you're working for." The room went quiet. Everyone leaned in. You can have persistence. You can have discipline. You can make decisions quickly. But if you don't have a clear purpose, you're like a ship at sea with no compass. The waves will toss you, the winds will push you, and you'll drift for years without ever reaching shore. The story of John, one of the young men in the room, John, felt those words hit deep. For years he had been jumping from job to job, bartender 1 year, salesman the next, handyman after that. He worked hard, but nothing seemed to last. He always told himself he just needed a better opportunity, more money, or the right connections. But listening to the old man, John realized his real problem. He had no definite purpose. Napoleon Hill wrote that definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement. Without it, your effort is scattered. With it, your energy becomes like a laser, focused, unstoppable, capable of cutting through any obstacle. Wandering versus directed energy. John thought about his life. He had persistence at times, but it was persistence without direction. He had discipline, but it was discipline wasted on things that didn't matter. He made decisions, but they were random. It was like pouring water into sand. No matter how much he poured, nothing lasted. The old man continued. Purpose gives meaning to your persistence. Purpose fuels your discipline. Purpose gives your decisions power. Without purpose, all your hard work just makes you tired. With purpose, the same work turns into progress. Finding the why. That night, John sat at his kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper. At the top, he wrote one question. What do I really want from this life? At first, the answers felt silly. I want more money. I want to be successful. I want to be happy. But those were vague. Too shallow. So he dug deeper. He asked again. Why do I want more money? The answer came. So I can take care of my family. He asked again. Why do I want success? The answer. So I know my life mattered. He kept asking, why, until his answers burned in his chest. Finally, he wrote down his definite purpose. My purpose is to build a business that gives my family security and inspires others to chase their dreams. For the first time in years, John felt clear. His energy, his effort, his persistence finally had a home. The mountain climber purpose is like a mountain. From the ground, it looks huge, impossible, overwhelming. But when you know that reaching the top is your life's mission, every step suddenly matters. The climb is still hard. You still trip, stumble, and scrape your knees. But you no longer doubt where you're going. Every sunrise becomes fuel. Every setback becomes part of the climb. This is what John discovered. His life didn't magically become easy. But now every job he took, every book he read, every skill he practiced was aligned with his definite purpose. And because of that, he started making progress that actually lasted. Burning the bridges. Napoleon Hill often told the story of generals who, after landing their armies on enemy shores, burned the ships behind them. With no retreat possible, the soldiers had no choice but to win. That's what John did. He stopped telling himself he'd figure things out someday. He committed to his purpose. He burned the bridge to his old wandering life. From then on, every decision was judged by a single standard. Does this move me closer to my purpose? If yes, he acted. If no, he walked away. The world steps aside. Something strange happened once John got clear. Opportunities began to appear. People who once ignored him started offering help. Doors that had always been closed suddenly cracked open. Why? Because the world steps aside for the man or woman who knows where they're going. Confidence attracts support. Clarity attracts resources. Most people drift through life like leaves in the wind. But when you walk with purpose, others notice. They respect it. Some even join you. The final lesson: the old man's words prove true. Persistence matters, discipline matters, decision-making matters. But all of them mean little without a definite purpose. Purpose is the blueprint. Persistence is the hammer. Discipline is the daily work. Decision is the speed. Put them together, and you can build anything. John eventually built his business. It wasn't easy. He faced setbacks, failures, betrayals. But through it all, his purpose pulled him forward like a magnet. And one day, standing in front of the company he had built, surrounded by his family and employees, he realized the truth. Purpose had given his life meaning. Fire lesson of Part 6. Your greatest power is a definite purpose. Decide what you want, write it down, and commit to it. Burn the bridges behind you. Every decision, every effort, every ounce of discipline should serve that purpose. When you live with purpose, you don't just chase success, you attract it. Call to action: if this story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs a push to find their purpose. Leave a comment about the purpose you're ready to commit to. And don't forget to subscribe, because together, we're building not just success stories, but lives of real meaning. Backhand index pointing right. That's the final Part 6. Written as a conclusion with a powerful story plus Napoleon Hill principles plus call to action.